The rain had just stopped when I first saw him. The city smelled of wet concrete and cheap coffee. Cars passed in long silver lines, their lights cutting through the mist. I was standing outside the bookstore where I worked, holding a box of new arrivals, when he came running across the street, late soaked, and smiling. His name was Armin. He was not rich, his shoes were old. His shirt was faded, but his smile had something rare: honesty. He apologized for bumping into me and helped me pick up the books that had fallen. I remember thinking, no one looks at you like that anymore. Not in this city. That day, he bought a secondhand novel and promised to return it when he finished reading. I thought he was joking, but 2 days later he came back carrying the book neatly wrapped in brown paper. "You should read this one," he said shyly. "It's about a man who loses everything except his heart." We talked for hours, about books, dreams, and the city we both loved and hated. He worked at a small repair shop. I worked part-time to support my mother and younger sister. We didn't have much, but when I was with him, the world felt full. Every evening he would wait for me near the corner cafe. We couldn't afford coffee inside, so we'd sit on the steps outside, sharing a paper cup of hot tea. He would make me laugh, even when life felt heavy. His hands were rough from work, but they held me like I was something fragile. Sometimes he would say, "One day, I'll have enough to give you everything you deserve." And I would whisper, "I only want you." I meant it. I really did. Months passed. The city changed its colors, from the gray chill of winter to the gold of early summer. Love grew quietly between us, like a small plant fighting through the cracks in stone. We didn't talk about the future. We just lived inside our moments, but reality doesn't stay away for long. One night, my mother waited for me with a letter in her hands. Her face was pale. "It's from your uncle," she said. "He wants you to meet someone. A businessman. A good man." I laughed at first. A good man? Or a rich one? Her eyes didn't meet mine. "Both, maybe. We can't keep struggling like this, Layla. Rent, medicine, your sister's school. We need help." That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I thought of Armin, his hands, his laughter, his promises. I thought of the leaky roof, the unpaid bills, my mother coughing in the next room. Love is soft. Life is not. The next day, I met the man, Kamal. His world was marble floors, polished cars, and quiet servants who never smiled. He was kind in a distant way, polite but cold. He looked at me like I was a deal being signed. He asked about my hobbies. I told him I liked to read. He said, "That's nice," and checked his watch. When I came home, Armin was waiting at the bookstore. He brought flowers wrapped in newspaper. He smiled, but his eyes were full of questions. "Layla," he said softly, "is something wrong?" I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to say, "No, I will never leave you." But instead I smiled and said, "Everything's fine." That was the first lie. Days turned into weeks. My uncle kept calling. My mother kept crying. Armin kept waiting. I was breaking piece by piece, caught between love and survival. Every time I saw Armand's face, I felt guilty for the life I couldn't give him. Every time I saw Kamal's wealth, I felt small for wanting more. One rainy afternoon, Armin came to see me. He looked tired, his clothes damp. "I heard you're getting engaged," he said quietly. My breath stopped. "Who told you? Does it matter?" His voice cracked. "Tell me it's not true." I looked away. I couldn't. My silence was enough. He took a step back, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I can't compete with gold, Layla," he whispered. "But remember, money can buy everything except the warmth of a hand that truly loves you." He left before I could say a word. The sound of his footsteps disappeared into the rain. That night, I cried until my pillow was soaked. My mother came into my room holding my hand. "Sometimes, my daughter," she said, "we must choose what keeps us alive, not what keeps us dreaming." I wanted to scream that dreams were the only thing keeping me alive, but I stayed silent. A week later, I was engaged to Kamal. The ring on my finger sparkled like a star, but it felt heavier than a chain. Everyone congratulated me. My mother smiled again. My uncle said I had done well. Only I knew what I had lost. The next time I walked past the bookstore, Armin wasn't there. The shelves looked empty. The city felt colder. Love had left quietly, like the last page of a book that no one noticed was missing. And I was left to read a story I didn't want to live. The The wedding was beautiful. At least that's what everyone said. The music played softly, the guests smiled, and golden lights shimmered across the hall like falling stars. My dress sparkled under the chandeliers, but I felt hollow inside, like a ghost wearing silk. Kamal stood beside me, perfect in his tailored suit. His smile looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. When he held my hand for the photograph, his fingers felt cool and heavy. Everyone clapped. Everyone cheered, but no one saw the tears I swallowed with every flash of the camera. The next morning, I woke up in a house so large it echoed when I walked. The marble floor was cold beneath my feet. Every corner smelled of roses and silence. Servants moved like shadows, polite but distant. They called me madam as if I had lost my name. Kamal left early for work. He said he had a meeting. He always had meetings. I sat by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass, wondering if Armand still waited at the cafe corner. Days passed into weeks. The mansion was full of everything money could buy, perfume, clothes, gold, but empty of laughter, warmth, or noise. Kamal was kind in the way rich people are kind. He bought gifts instead of time, comfort instead of care. Sometimes he would say, "You have everything now, Layla. Why do you look sad?" I would smile and say, "I'm just tired." But inside I was dying of loneliness. Every sound reminded me of what I had lost. The ticking of the clock reminded me of our late talks under the streetlights. The smell of tea reminded me of the paper cup we shared outside that cafe. Even the silence reminded me of his voice, soft and full of hope. One evening I found an old box of my things from before the wedding. Inside was a book wrapped in brown paper. My hands shook when I opened it. It was the novel Armand had given me the first time we met. Inside the cover he had written, "For the one who believes love can survive anything." I cried until the ink blurred. That night Kamal returned home late. He smelled of wine and expensive perfume that wasn't mine. He didn't notice the tears on my face. He kissed my forehead and said, "You should go shopping tomorrow. It'll make you feel better." I nodded. There was nothing else to say. Weeks turned into months. I became a decoration in my own life, a beautiful figure in someone else's story. Every morning, I wore the jewels he bought, smiled at the people he chose, and played the part of a perfect wife. Inside, I was screaming silently. Once, during a charity event, I saw a man outside the gate selling flowers. His hair was wet from the drizzle, his hands rough, his eyes tired but gentle. For one mad second, I thought it was Armand. I ran toward him, but it wasn't him. Still, the shock left me trembling. That night I couldn't sleep. The next morning I took a walk alone without the driver. I went back to the old street near the bookstore. The shop was still there, but the sign was faded. Inside, the shelves were dusty. A young boy stood behind the counter. "Do you know the man who used to work here?" "Armand?" I asked. He looked confused. "Oh, Armand Bai? He left months ago. Said he was going back to his village. Never came back." My heart sank. I whispered a soft thank you and walked out before the boy could see my tears. Outside, the rain started again. The same kind of rain from the day we met. I stood there, letting it soak my hair and dress as if washing away the life I had chosen. But it didn't. The gold on my hands still glittered like chains. That night, Kamal found me sitting by the window holding the old book. He frowned. "Why do you always look so sad?" "I'm not sad," I lied. He looked at me for a long moment. "You miss your old life, don't you?" I stayed silent. He sighed. "Layla, that life had nothing. This one has everything. You should be grateful." Grateful. The word felt sharp. I wanted to ask, grateful for what? For a cage that shines. For a heart that's dying quietly. But I said nothing. After he left the room, I whispered to myself, maybe love isn't about what we have. Maybe it's about what we lose. Months later, I began to draw again. Sketches of faces, streets, memories. One afternoon, while cleaning my art desk, I found an old envelope. Inside was a letter I had written but never sent. It was to Armand. My hands trembled as I read it. "If you ever read this, know that I never stopped loving you. I did what I had to do, not what I wanted to. I hope you are happy even if I am not." I folded it back, pressed it against my chest, and cried quietly. That night, I dreamed of him. We were back at the cafe steps sharing tea. He looked at me with the same eyes, warm, forgiving. When I woke up, the pillow was wet. Years passed slowly. Kamal's business grew. He traveled often. People called us a perfect couple, but perfection is a mask. Behind it, I was fading. Sometimes I'd stand on the balcony at night, looking at the city lights, whispering his name, Armin, like a prayer the wind could carry. Once, when Kamal was out of town, I went back to that old park where Armin and I used to sit. The bench was still there, though the paint had peeled. An old vendor recognized me. "You used to come here with that mechanic boy," he said softly. I nodded, unable to speak. He smiled kindly. "He was a good boy. Helped me fix my cart once. Said he was leaving to start over. Maybe he did." I sat on that bench for hours, feeling the years between us like a wall. I realized something cruel and simple. I had traded love for security and lost both. That evening, back at the mansion, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The jewels, the silk, the perfect hair, all of it shimmered, but the eyes staring back at me were lifeless. I whispered, "You got everything you wanted, Layla, except peace." For the first time, I removed my wedding ring and placed it on the table. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Somewhere, far away, maybe in another small town, a man with empty pockets looked at the same storm and remembered me. And that thought both comforted and destroyed me. The winter that year came early. Cold winds pressed against the mansion windows, whispering through the hallways like ghosts. I had grown thinner, quieter. My laughter had become a memory that belonged to another woman, one who still believed in dreams. Kamal and I lived like polite strangers. We spoke during dinners, shared the same house, but not the same life. He was always on the phone talking about deals, partners, expansion. I was always somewhere else, lost between what was and what could never be again. One evening, as I walked through the city streets alone, I passed by a charity board that listed the names of local donors. My eyes caught a familiar one at the bottom of the list, Armin Malik, Community Workshop Project. For a moment, my heart forgot how to beat. I stood frozen, staring at those letters like they were carved into my soul. Could it be him? After all these years? That night I searched for the project. It was a small workshop near the edge of the city, where poor children were taught skills. Woodwork, repairs, small crafts. The next morning I went there, pretending to be a volunteer. The air smelled of sawdust and paint. Boys hammered wood while girls painted small toys. And then I saw him. He was older now. His hair had silver streaks and his hands were still rough but steady. When he looked up, time stopped. Our eyes met and the years between us vanished. He didn't speak. Neither did I. The silence between us said everything. Finally, he smiled, in a tired, gentle smile. "You came," he said softly. "I had to see if it was really you." "It's me," he said. "What's left of me?" We sat outside on a bench, the same kind of wooden bench we once shared tea on. The afternoon sun stretched long shadows between us. "I heard you left the city," I said. He nodded. "I had to. There was nothing here for me then." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "For everything." He looked away. "You don't owe me an apology, Layla. You made a choice. I made the wrong one." "Maybe," he said quietly. "But we all do sometimes." The air between us felt heavy with everything unsaid. The dreams we lost, the promises we broke, the lives we didn't live. After that day, I found excuses to visit the workshop again. I told Kamal I was helping a community project. He didn't care to ask which one. Each time I saw Armin, something inside me healed and hurt at the same time. He never mentioned the past, and I never spoke of the present. We talked about the children, the work, the tools, anything but us. One evening I stayed late to help him clean. The sunset painted the room gold. He looked at me and said, "You shouldn't come here too often. People will talk." "Let them," I said softly. He smiled, shaking his head. "You haven't changed." "Neither have you," I replied. "You still build things that last." He looked into my eyes. "Not everything I built lasted, Layla." The silence that followed said more than words ever could. Winter deepened. I began to feel weaker, tired all the time. The doctor said it was exhaustion, stress. But I knew it was something else. The weight of years lived without joy. One morning, Kamal left for another business trip. I took a cab to the workshop, but when I arrived, the place was closed. A woman nearby told me, "The man who runs it, Armin, right? He's in the hospital. Heart trouble." The words hit me like a wave. I didn't even wait to think. I ran. At the hospital, the air smelled of antiseptic and sorrow. I found him in a small room, pale against the white sheets. His eyes opened when I entered. "Layla," he whispered, smiling weakly. "You came." Tears filled my eyes. "Don't say anything, please, just rest." He reached for my hand. His touch was still warm, even as his body trembled. "I didn't think I'd see you again," he said. "But I'm glad you're here. I always wanted to know that you were happy." I shook my head. "I'm not. I haven't been for a long time." He looked at me for a long while, sadness softening his expression. "Then maybe this is where we find peace," he said quietly. The machines beside him beeped steadily. I wanted to hold time still to keep him there, breathing, alive. But life is cruel like that. It gives you back what you lost only long enough to say goodbye. Days passed. I visited him every evening. Sometimes he talked about the children at the workshop, how he wanted them to learn more, to dream bigger. Sometimes we just sat in silence, listening to the rain outside. One night he gave me a small notebook. "These are letters I wrote to you," he said. "I never sent them. Maybe you should have them now." I took it home. When I opened it, tears blurred the ink almost instantly. Each page was a piece of his heart, his struggles, his memories, his hopes that I was happy somewhere. Somehow, the last entry was dated 2 months before. "If she ever finds this, I want her to know I forgave her long ago." Love doesn't vanish. It just changes shape. Sometimes it becomes a quiet prayer. When I went back the next day, his bed was empty. The nurse said he had passed in his sleep. I didn't cry at first. I just stood there holding the flowers I brought, staring at the cold white sheets. Then the world collapsed around me. That evening, the city lights blurred through my tears as I walked home. Every step felt like carrying the weight of years I could never change. At home, Kamal was packing for another trip. He looked up briefly. "You look tired. Everything all right?" I nodded. "Yes," I said quietly. "Everything's over." He shrugged and went back to his suitcase. He didn't notice that my eyes were red, or that something inside me had finally broken. A week later, I visited Armand's workshop one last time. The children were playing outside. On the wall, someone had hung a small wooden sign. "In loving memory of Armand Malik, he built hope with his hands." I touched the sign, my heart heavy but strangely calm. Inside, his tools still rested neatly on the shelves. I placed a single red rose on his work table and whispered, "You built my heart too. I just didn't know how to keep it." As I left, a little boy ran up to me holding a small wooden bird. "Uncle Armand made this," he said proudly. "He said it could fly if you believe hard enough." I smiled through my tears and took it. "Then I'll believe." That night, back at the mansion, I sat on the balcony, the wind cold against my face. I held the wooden bird in my hand. Below, the city lights flickered like stars caught in a storm. I whispered his name once more, not in sorrow, but in love. Because love, I realized, doesn't die when a person does. It lingers in small things: a book, a memory, a carved wooden bird that never truly flies away. The next morning, the servants found the balcony door open and the ring left neatly on the table beside a note. It read only one line: "I loved a poor man, but I married a rich one, and lost the only thing that was ever truly mine." The paper fluttered in the breeze, soft and final, as if her words had at last found the peace her heart never could.